There was a time when people considered buying homes so that they could be near Regency Square Mall. Now, it can't even lure vendors. To talk about why that is and how the city plans to address it is Ken Amaro, the Arlington District Council member for the city of Jacksonville. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Ann. Not just a district representative, but a longtime resident of Arlington. So I've seen the transition.
Yeah, so talk about that. I mean, you are too young of a fellow to have been living in Jacks when this mall opened, but certainly you remember your early
Oh
experiences
yeah,
with it.
fantastic place to go to. It became a hub. You bring your families. You not only shop. There were entertainments, fine eateries. I'm trying to. God, the name just escaped me. Some of the restaurants that were there that were just magnets. You went there, and so you did all those things to as a family, and it helped the community tremendously. And over the years, we saw this dramatic decline.
You have 3 daughters?
4.
4 daughters
Yeah.
and a couple of grandkids now?
Yeah, 3 grandkids. I'm a girl dad with 3 grandkids, and my oldest, she is 13. I want to get that right because that's kind of sensitive
Important.
there. Playing volleyball and things of that nature. In fact, they reside in Houston, and I got a call the other day, and she said, "Papa, we were cooking. We, in other words, they were crushing it."
Uh, I mean, I wonder with your girls, was that a destination mall for you as a family? Was that the kind of place? Because they used to have all kinds of events there, not just shopping, but concerts and
Fashion
recitals.
shows, things of that
Right.
nature. And so, yes, it was, as I said a second ago, for not just my family, but families not only in the Regency area, but throughout the area, from the beaches to the west side, the east side, that would come to Regency Square Mall. Uh,
And we know that that has changed somewhat. There's been a lot of reporting on its decline. Let's hear just from one recent story about Regency.
It used to be a place where people hung out and had fun, shop and eat, but as you can see, it's decrepit and empty, and now there are only 2 vendors left inside, a Japanese restaurant and a jewelry store.
So it is almost empty.
yeah, decrepit is an appropriate description. Um, yeah, some of the, I guess, legacy tenants that they had, the Lens Crafters, the Bath and Body Works, and things like that. I mean, they left. They left in a hurry. They were trying to hang in there because they had the customer base. People would still come in spite of to get their, vision check, new pair of glasses, or get their favorite Bath and Body Works, candles, fragrance, whatever it is. So they did have a steady stream of customers that would come in spite of, and then once the conditioning went out and the roofs were leaking and the management and the owners weren't willing to do anything, it was like we're out. And so Jimmy Jam's Urban Wear Store was one of the last large retailers who was in there, and they bailed out as well. And so the writing was on the wall. I do believe if the Impact Church was still not there, then everything else around it would surely come tumbling down.
Yeah. You, before you were a city council member, many people will remember you were a consumer reporter
Hmm.
at First Coast News for many, many years, 42 years.
Hmm.
This was a story that you covered as a journalist before you had it as your responsibility as a council member.
What's amazing to me is the current property owners are. It's not like they're struggling for money. It's like a $3 billion company. They have made a business paradigm of acquiring shopping centers that are in marginal status around the country. In fact, Namdar Realty, Wall Street Journal did a piece about a year and a half ago, or maybe less, about their business practice, how they've acquired a couple of hundred shopping centers, and then they just let them go into absolute decline. And I use the expression to describe them as real estate vampires. They suck everything out of the property and then dispose it after municipalities start enforcing code violations like what we're doing here in Jacksonville. the code violations at Regency are about 2 million now.
Yeah, and we've been showing some pictures on our live stream. The images of the inside of the current Regency Square Mall are just apocalyptic. I mean, the ceiling is, falling in, the mold is everywhere. These are places that didn't have air conditioning for a long time. Um, I mean, first of all, how has that company been are they at all responsive to your inquiries, to the fact that they have accrued all of these code violation fines?
Recently, before we're before it arrived at the position that it's now with just the one vendor in the food court and the jewelry store, there was a Braille book um, tenant that the air conditioning went out on their side, and my office reached out to NAMDAR and with some very stern language, and they within a week or so they responded to that and they restored the air conditioning on that side of the building. But that was my last communications with them because there was a deal pending with Blackwater to acquire the property. Don't know what's the status of that. The anticipated closing date was in January. That has not occurred. Um, so I don't know if there's still conversations taking place. I've had talks with some others, and I don't think I'm in a position to disclose who they are right now. But they have left me feeling optimistic that since Blackwater hasn't physically closed in January, that things are shifting.
What
Um,
what would that suggest if Blackwater wasn't taking over the property? Would that allow for more flexibility, or?
well, what it does is it opens it up for others to have an interest,
I see.
who may have an interest to acquire the property. It's a tricky situation because there are multiple property owners.
Right.
The
Explain
Sears
us
is
that.
owned
There's
Sears Sears location and the Sears parking is owned by a former Sears executive who acquired a number of Sears properties when Sears went under. In the rear of that, you've got the Dillard's property, which is owned by Dillard's. And then on the front, you've got the Impact Church property and its parking spaces, which is owned by the Impact Church. Uh,
and that's almost kind of divides the physical mall in half.
Precisely, yes, because they're like smack in the middle.
Mhm.
I know the church is amenable and willing to be a collaborator with whomever that comes forth. And because they have a vested interest, they have over $10 million already invested in that location. What's amazing to me is the math of this whole nightmare that NAMDAR historically acquired the property, including the AMC piece, for about 14 million. And don't hold me to the numbers. I'm just giving you a ballpark. And then they sold the AMC piece
Or double that.
for 20 something million. And then they sold the church piece for 10 million. So they've already made back whatever they
And then some.
invest and some. And yet there continues to be this dragging, this lack of commitment to what is clearly a prime piece of real estate that's a focal point for anyone that's traversing Monument, Atlantic Boulevard. The location is just prime,
Right in the center of so many.
approximately 80 acres or so.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're talking to City Council member Ken Amaro about Regency Square Mall and its decrepit state, as we've said, and its future. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I just want to read a couple of comments that we've been getting on social media. One saying, we saw something similar in Miami. All it needed was some investors and a glow up. Now it is the go-to mall in Kendall. I'm sure
Wow.
Regency will
Kendall
follow.
Mall
Mhm.
shopping center.
Another comment saying in its heyday, historic Regency Square Mall was the promenade and pop fashion nexus of Northeast Florida. Until the Riverwalk and Jacksonville Landing were established, Regency was a holiday mainstay and a safe place for teens and retirees, and an absolute destination for U.S. military returning from global missions. Millions of memories made there. I also want to take a call. from Stanley on the north side. Good morning, Stanley. Go ahead.
Yes. Um, Hello there, everybody. I'm a little disappointed here that we are not been able to. I'm talking about before Ken came. Um, this had been going over for years. Why have not the community put some recommendation to make some changes in that community? Because of the income level, that mall should be successful. That's a leadership problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Stanley. Um, that entire area, we should say, has, its fortunes have changed somewhat. I mean, Arlington was sort of the first suburb in
Hmm.
Jacksonville. You've lived there a long enough time to know that it has had some decline in some areas, certainly hard times.
It's funny, when I moved there, I used to jokingly say that it's the station wagon community with 2.2 kids. You're right. Initially, it was one of the new suburbs. Um, affordable homes, large lots. Families were drifting there, and it was stable for a very long time until newer suburban communities emerged, and then folks started moving to, whether it's Mandarin, St. Augustine, wherever it is, and so it became kind of transitional. And I wish I knew specifically what percentage of properties are now rental versus ownership, but it's in that transition stage, and so my commitment to that area is to stop the decline and rebuild it to what it was or what it can be. As far as the caller about the community has had a number of suggestions as to what can be done.
What do you hear from
But
them?
the community doesn't have the resources. This is not a community resource thing. It's having private investors with money that can come and say, let's acquire the property. If the seller is willing to sell, so you've got all these variables in the equation, and let's turn it around. Now, um, I said earlier that I'm optimistic because some of the things that I have heard have great possibility. I see a tremendous mixed use of not only residential but retail and more, and because again of the size of the property, the footprint is tremendous, and I think it can make a significant change on that corner.
What about a residential component? I mean, I know that
That's what I'm saying.
I
A
know, but
mixed
how
use of
realistic
retail,
is that? Is that
I think extremely, very realistic.
mhm.
If it's pieced properly with retail. Let's look at town center. Town center is a different concept, lifestyle concept. But right now, you can go to town center. A, you can stay at a hotel. B, you can rent an apartment at town center.
Right?
And C, you can shop. And E, you can eat. And so you can create that same kind of mixed use dynamic right there at that location because you've got the space to be able to do it.
I mean, the funny thing is people say that Regency Mall helped contribute to the decline of downtown Jacksonville. And then you have these other malls, including, Orange Park, the avenues initially, but then more recently Town Center, as draining away interest and the vibrancy of Regency. Is retail in that kind of scale just a zero-sum game?
Americans love to shop. Number one, I mean, we just got through the holidays not too long ago, and for weeks, what were we hearing about how much was being spent, and not only in brick and mortar at stores, but how much was also being spent online. So we're a very consumer driven society, if you will, and so I think that the opportunities are still there for retail at that particular location, if properly positioned, if it's attractive. I know it's hard to say that when we have Joanne Fabrics this week going out. So
Mhm.
it's just if you're going to be successful, you got to give people what they want and meet them at what they want. And so whatever is developed there will have to be what they want.
I wonder, just, in your role as a consumer reporter, one of the things that you would be covering are people's working conditions
Mhm.
or the ability to, for instance, return something if you've purchased something. Um, I would guess that the gradual and sometimes abrupt departure of some of these tenants
Oh.
has left people in the lurch, whether they're employees
Oh
or
yeah, you're
customers.
stuck with your stuff. Um, and you know, because of economic forces or whatever, we know that retail is a shifting landscape. And from a consumer's perspective, you have to be do your due diligence, know what your rights are, so you don't get stuck with stuff. And I have always, before I patronize a business, I want to know exchange policies and refunds and all that. Not that I have any intent of returning anything, but I want to know beforehand. I remember years ago, I went into a Regency Mall at a store, and I go into the retailer, and I had a gift card from the retailer. I can't remember the name of the retailer, and I went in there to use the gift card, and there were like conditions that, well, if you use the gift card, we can't give you this and that. And I said, "Oh, well, thank you, and I won't be back." I didn't go back. It's just instinctively for me that I do that kind of,
It's in your DNA
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, do that on the front end, so
Yeah.
that I don't have a problem on the back end.
I know that one of the things that was discussed, especially with that Sears portion, there
Hmm.
was conversation of whether Sporting Jacks was interested. That's the soccer league that is looking for a home. And that section, which is sort of the southwest corner of the
Hmm.
property, was attractive to them. Where are those conversations?
To the best of my knowledge, they're still ongoing. I have not um, had any talks with that group as of late, but I would imagine that they're still in the hunt. Um,
And they'd be having conversations with this same sort of negligent,
Precisely the
or
same players.
inattentive owner,
Yes,
I guess we
yes.
should say.
Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's no way to get around that. Karen Matheson has been diligent in following the ongoings of Regency Square Mall
Longtime business reporter here and
at,
editor
at,
of
at
the
the Daily
Daily
Record,
Record.
and she's done a couple of pieces where individuals had inquired about service availability, a Circle K, and most recently Hurricane Kane, a chicken tender retailer out of Baton Rouge area, and they inquired with JEA and COJ as to what service availability, water, sewer, things of that nature, but nothing has come forth as to moving that forward, and nothing can be done until they get some sort of agreement with the current owner, Namdar Realty. So,
Right. We've got a call from Eric on the south side. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you both for your decades of reporting here in the community. It's so important under the things that we're living with today. I'm a 77-year-old native of Jacksonville and a demographer. In June of 1965, I walked from University Boulevard to Regency, and I wasn't quite old enough to get a labor job. I try not to go to that area anymore. The housing is either 40 or 50 years old, or it's brand new over there on Regency Square Boulevard with no public access or even walking capability if Regency was still there. The intersection at Southside Boulevard and Atlantic is just a complete nightmare. People being injured and killed routinely. Arlingwood, yes, Ken, was wonderful. Who can afford a big yard now? We have water restrictions. Who can spend $1,000, $2,000 a year just to have a sprayer come in and take care of the bugs? For the decades I ride those neighborhoods and I look at them. I have now, 5, 6 decades of history. And you have about 40% of people in Duval County rent compared to one-third nationally. From Monument all the way to Indian Springs, it's a sea of cars. Cars everywhere. Cars being new, cars being repaired. It's frankly quite ugly.
Eric, thanks. Your thoughts,
if
Ken.
if he's speaking of Atlantic Boulevard being a little Detroit automotive highway. I mean, yes, that's true. Um, I
But in terms of like creating infrastructure in that area for people, pedestrians.
Well, there needs to be whatever development goes in there will include, since that's where we are in our development phase, that now you have to have walkability, you have to have bike paths, you have to have all those things to make any new communities really sustainable and enjoyable. I would imagine that whatever is done will include those elements. Yes, but you go back 40 years, some of the neighborhoods don't have sidewalks and may never have. As far I was talking with a young lady, what's today? Wednesday, Tuesday. She moved. She and her husband purchased a home in University Park um, this year, and she's like, I love being in Arlington. I've lived at the beaches. I've lived in Avondale. I live here, and I really love where I am. So, yes, the yards are big. Um, but there's still folks who are looking for that kind of. They don't want the 40-foot lots. They don't want their neighbors directly on top of them that you look out the window. There's still people who are looking for that, and that's what Arlington offers with some of its older homes that were built in the 70s
And of course, it has a
and
great
80s.
tree canopy, which
And,
not
and
every part of the city
precisely. And
can
so
boast.
it's just ironic that just 2 days ago I was having a conversation with her, and I simply said, "Well, welcome to Arlington."
I want to ask you about just other stuff that's on your mind. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, there's lots going on in your district and a lot going on in the city right now, including conversations about a new jail,
Hmm.
discussions about a land swap for the University of Florida that could possibly lead to a development on the old landing site. What is top of mind for you right now?
Well, the two things. Let's take the two subjects you mentioned. First, the land swap piece. The backstory is that UF wants to start classes this fall, and some local investors acquired a piece of property from Home Depot, the Interline property on Bay Street, and the UF vision is to have its campus going from that location westward toward the convention center, and they would like that to be the launching piece of the future growth. Um, DIA, Downtown Investment Authority, is kind of orchestrating this deal, if you will. And as of late, it came up that the current owners of that property would like to swap for two parcels, one where the landing used to be and the adjacent parking that's close to the Main Street Bridge
Mhm.
in exchange for that. There's been some challenges as to valuation. Are they of equal value? And that, to the best of my knowledge, there's now an assessment taking place to see if they are indeed of equal value. The investors acquired the property for $4 million. They told me that uh, they were approached, number one, about buying the property, had no interest in the
Who
property.
is this you're talking about now? The
Gateway,
Okay, the Gateway Development.
Gateway Development, that they were approached. They had no interest, and when they were approached, and they were willing to provide, yeah, it was done by Collier, one of the largest
You're talking
commercial.
about when they acquired the Interline property.
Precisely. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they had no interest. And their investors are, well, if it's a good price, I guess we'll pick it up. And so they offered to buy it for $4 million, and the seller, Interline Home Depot, was willing to sell it for that, and so they acquired it for that.
And
And
you're
to
saying that's important because there was questions about the timeline. Did
precisely
they acquire that knowing that
knowing
UF
UF was,
wanted it?
yeah,
And, was that
yeah,
somehow a deal that was
yeah,
made? And
and
you're
and
saying
that's the cloud over it. But they've presented substantial documentation that that was not the case at all. Even willing to provide the realtor who brokered the deal, et cetera, et cetera. And so now the question is it of equal value? One of my peers, Councilman Salen, has introduced legislation to purchase it outright instead of doing a land swap. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of conversation in the next few days. In the meantime, University of Florida is hoping that they can have that building in place to get classes start this fall.
Do want to take a couple of
Sure.
calls. JD in San Marco, go ahead, JD.
Yes. First of all, my favorite consumer watchdog. Love you to death there,
Thank you, JD.
Ken. What I was wondering was why in the world didn't somebody float the idea years back when it started going into decline? Why didn't they take that idea of turning it into an outlet mall like they have in St. Augustine, like they have in Daytona? I think an outlet mall would have been it's a perfect location. People would have flocked there from all over Jacksonville. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, JD. You know, I unfortunately I can't tell the entire history, but I remember as a reporter, the property was owned by a company out of Chicago, and they went into bankruptcy, and that's where the decline started. They went up into bankruptcy. Namdar acquired them out of bankruptcy. So if we could turn back the hands of time, and for some reason I want to say the company's name was Continental, but I don't recall. If they had seen the writing on the wall and started making changes back then, we probably wouldn't be where we are right now.
Do you think the city will ever recoup those code violations, those fines at nearly $2 million we're talking about?
Well, I'll be honest. If we have new investors come in that are committed and have the dollars and and they've acquired the property, I would be willing to forgive those, put those fines on the side, if you will. And there's precedent for that. They've done it with other properties, so that the investors can move forward and not have to be saddled with an additional $2 million.
Got a call from William on the south side. Good morning, William. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm enjoying the conversation because I have reflections about when that area was bustling with so many businesses. But because of the economic downturn, my question or ideas from y'all, it's becoming a food desert because there aren't really any grocery stores in the area. What are the city's plans or anything related to investing and bringing more grocery stores and supermarkets to the area for that community? And thank you very much.
Thanks, William.
Thanks, William. William, less than 2 miles away from that location, there's an Aldi supermarket. But I would agree with you to some degree that if you go east of that, there's nothing. And so, if I'm still on the city council, I can assure you of one thing, that anyone that comes to me with proposal, mixed use, retail, that somehow that would be one of the elements that I would like to see incorporated in the future use of that property. There's a Publix on Monument, but that's probably about 6-7 miles away. So his point is well taken. The old Best Buy on Atlantic, at one time there was an large Asian supermarket that was interested in doing something with that Best Buy property, but I haven't heard anything, so I don't even know if that's even still on the table.
Got a call from Vicki in St. Johns County. Go ahead, Vicki.
Hi. Regarding the Regency Square Mall, I've always thought it would be a good idea to combine FCCJ and now UNF and put the campuses there. It's all under roof and with lots of great parking.
Oh.
Thanks, Vicki. I mean, certainly FSCJ tried that experiment with the Bay Meadows Mall.
Yeah, the Grand Boulevard Mall,
Mhm.
and it's working.
Mhm.
They've made that kind of a I don't want to say fintech, but I'll say tech center. And for Florida State College, that is working. They've transformed that location. It's being used and used well. UNF, they've taken the Kernan Boulevard corridor,
Mhm.
and they've acquired several properties. I'm trying to remember the computer program company that was out there. They acquired that property, and I think they would prefer to be right there where they are versus having some extension campus somewhere else throughout
Right.
the city.
And I do want to get back to the jail just because there was a
Yes.
protest
Yeah.
about it yesterday. We mentioned it just briefly, but there are some voices emerging saying if the city's going to drop $1 billion estimated to build a new jail, let's put other priorities, other considerations in the mix along with that. Community saying we've got other needs.
And these are some interesting issues. Councilmember Michael Boylan chaired a quality of life committee long before I got there, and as part of that, they also looked at the jail. When Councilman Ron Salem was president of the council, he established a jail committee, and again they looked at the jail. And the reality is, in fact, City Council the other night approved a new lease agreement so that the sheriff can move his resources from the police memorial building to what the Blue Cross Blue Shield building on Riverside.
The police functions,
The-
not the jail.
Not the
Just to be
jail,
clear,
just
yeah.
the police memorial building, and then that's the I think that's going to be the impetus of this that property slowly being removed from the riverfront. Um, and so a study determined that yes, this facility is woefully inadequate. Blah 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 blah. And then there've been some estimates as to what will it cost to to replace in today's dollars, 800 million, $1 billion, things of that nature. And then the other question is, where do you put it? And then the third question is, well, do you let a private investor actually do the outlay and then you lease from them? There are a lot of conversations, nothing thus far, but it's a need, and we can argue about services versus jail, where you're putting your resources, and people in this community want to feel safe. There's still public safety is still a paramount concern, and that's part of that piece. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know where that conversation is going to wrap up. Whatever they do, it's going to have to be compliant to laws because they've had so many issues not meeting federal standards, things of that nature.
Hmm.
It's going to have to be an institution with that also provides compassion. Um, right now, um, there will probably have to be a campus type environment, and I'm just speaking out of terms there, just from the conversations, because of the need for mental health treatment and things of that nature and medical services. So I have no idea where it's going to go, but it's unfortunate that the narrative yesterday made it seem like there was a decision pending, that legislation had been introduced, that a vote was coming, and I'm pretty sure that as we go through the deliberations, all of this will be taken into context.
Well, Ken Amaro, it is a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being on here
And
today.
thank you for having me, and thank you for what you guys are doing, keeping the community informed and keeping us in check.
All right. That's our goal.